Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm super excited because I have with us today Mark Attwood, and I've been wanting to talk to him for such a long time. He is the author of a book called Weapons of Mass Protection: Practical Tools for Spiritual Warfare that he authored with Abby Wynne. Am I saying that right, Mark? Is it
You
Abby?
are. You are.
So I read your book, Mark, and I thought it was brilliant. And as I mentioned to you before, I'm actually going to reread it because it's got a lot of workshop stuff in it that you really need to sit down and like focus on doing. Really practical and great advice for folks who are, currently battling this war that we're having. It's spiritual war, and so, what I'd like to do first for folks that don't know you is have you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, what you're currently working on now. I know you have a health clinic that you're working on, or it's in the works, right? A
No, it's
healing.
been open for 18 months.
Oh, it's been open already. Because I thought I saw a video where you were adding like water filters and doing all this great
We're
stuff.
always adding to it.
Always adding. Okay. So yeah, go ahead and tell folks who you are and about your clinic.
Well, I'm an English guy and who always forgets to turn his WhatsApp off when he does recordings at the time the kids leave school. Sorry about that. No, I'm an English guy, but I live in the west of Ireland. Uh, my earliest memory is demons trying to recruit me in my bedroom in 1973. And that was a memory that disappeared for a lot of my life and then sort of came back over the last 15 years when the spiritual awakening really ramped up for me personally. But going back in time a little bit, my first job was in the military. I was a pilot in the RAF under training. And what really sort of started waking me up was when there's a few things that happened while I was in the military that were a bit strange, but then I got an award at St James's Palace from Prince Philip, who was the Queen's husband, and he didn't recognize my uniform, and I thought this was very strange because he was the head of the RAF, and he had to go. He said, "I see you've joined and then somebody had to whisper in his ear, "Right there, Foster." And I was 18 at the time, 19, I think. And I was like, what? How does he not? And I gave him a look and he gave me a dirty look back, whipped his hand away. And I can still feel his piercing eyes. And I came away from that day thinking, who am I working for? Who am I actually working for? Who are these people? And it was a very slow process, really. But anyway, it ended up with me resigning. And then I just went through a series of crazy career choices. I ended up being I was a journalist at the Daily Telegraph, which is one of the biggest papers in the UK. I was a stand-up comic. I was a published poet at a very young age, and I did that for years. And then I set up different businesses and my in publishing and then the internet. When the internet came along, I set up a business that did really well in the UK, and then I was an internet marketing teacher, and I always wondered why I was doing that because I was kind of like school of Bill Hicks, if you work in marketing, kill yourself, it was kind of, and I was like, what am I doing in this? And it all kind of made sense because when COVID hit, by that point, I already knew that was coming. I'd already read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in 1999, which freaked me out. And if nobody knows what that is, the best way of finding out what that is to go to Janet Osbard's full Cabal channel on BitChute and just look up the excellent short documentary she did on the protocols because that is really illuminating. And then I got into, I'd read all the, it was just drawn to all the conspiracy stuff because I knew things weren't right in the world. And like a lot of people watching this, I was an outsider. I felt like an outsider my whole life. I was black. I wasn't a black sheep so much. I mean, my family loved me, but I didn't understand what, any of them or why they were living the way that they lived. And I was constantly sort of fighting the system all the time. And it was only when COVID hit that I was like, what had happened was that I'd moved to Ireland in 2017 after living in Marrakesh in Morocco, North Africa for 4 years. And as soon as I got here, me and my wife split up, and then I was suicidally depressed. And basically, God saved me and said, "No, you're not finished. You got some." And I was like, "What? What?" I thought I was finished, ruined. Five little kids who saved my life, really, because they're just amazing. And then I got told to start a YouTube channel. I was on a road trip with my son, and I kept hearing this voice saying, "You need to start a YouTube channel. You're gonna start it now." And I was like, it was like being nagged. And I was like, okay, all right. And I gave the camera. I said to my son, point this at me. He was like, why? I said, I don't know, just I don't know. And that was nearly 5 years ago. And throughout the COVID period, I just was compelled to s- talk on YouTube and try to make people laugh and talk about things that were interesting and talk about positive things because in my soul, I've always known this is a process that we have to go through and it's going to be good for us. I mean, when I toured America in 2022, I stood up in 17 cities across America and I said, COVID was the best thing that's ever happened to the human race. And I expected people to throw tomatoes at me, but a lot of people agreed with me. And we are going through a spiritual ascension, and it's a spiritual war. And I guess I got kind of well known for the poetry that I was producing. I was producing these poetry videos all the way through the first 3 years of it, and they got millions and millions of views, and and then that became a book as well. And it was only actually when I got to America that I realized what was going on because I met about 10,000 people and they come up to me and say, "Thank you so much. You helped me get through." And I was like, "Oh, that's why I was doing it." Really, my understanding is my personal mission was to just let as many of the isolated star seeds, let's put it that way, know because they were trying to cut us all off, know that they weren't alone. It wasn't really about waking people up for me. It was about, look, you're not alone and it's going to be okay. And ever since then, I've just had this image in my head of a hand over the bridge,
Mm.
pulling people over the bridge, which is why we opened the healing center here in the west of Ireland 18 months ago, because people were dropping dead. People are dropping dead now. And what I noticed throughout the truther world is that there were a lot of cults being set up, and I call them limited hangouts. And this is not to be disparaging to anybody, but a lot of things like, "Oh, the RV is going to happen tomorrow, and we'll all be rich tomorrow." I'm like, "Well, you're not yet. What are you going to do today?" And it's the same with the med beds. People say, "I'm waiting for the med beds." I'm like, "Why would you wait?" I mean, that technology I'm sure exists, but it's not here at the moment, and people are dying today. So, I got this very strong message, which is very funny actually, because I'd studied the works. Well, actually, funnily enough, I was supposed to bring the book home with me. Dolores Cannon's work,
God.
talking about different waves of souls coming in. And somebody said, "You're a bridge, don't you?" And I was like, "What's that?" And I had to look it up, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." People in their 50s that doing this type of thing are bridges, according to Dolores and her work. And I was like, that idea of being a bridge really resonates with me. So I find that a lot of the work that I've been doing is really about forgiving everybody, loving everybody, and providing solutions and building the world that we want to see now, rather than waiting for any savior or anybody to come over the hill on a white steed, because we have everything that we need.
Hmm.
And we're going back to being sovereign individuals, because as you cannot have a sovereign nation without sovereign individuals. So how do you becoming sovereign? What does that mean? And that's the thing that's been a theme of my life for years. And it's really about taking responsibility over your health, your wealth, your spirituality, your thoughts, your emotions, all of these things you need to be responsible for. And this has been the most incredible period in history for humans to actually start asking themselves that question and then starting to do something about it.
Right.
And that's really what it's about. And when I got the message to open the healing center, I had a friend here who coincidentally had moved to the same town within a couple of weeks of me on the same street from just extraordinary. And we'd been talking about healing centers and the need for, this technology. A lot of it is simple stuff, red light therapies actually just replicating the sun, same as UV light, same as hyperbaric oxygen is replicating. It's oxygen, it's nature.
Right.
But these things are designed to help cleanse and strengthen the cell at a cellular level, which is what we knew we had to do because and it is connected to the spiritual war as well. Because the message I kept getting, because I'm claircognizant, and I kept getting the same thing. The detritus inside every cell is part of the technology that the demonic realm used to latch onto us.
Hmm.
So it's very clear to me that the the whole world has been demonically possessed our entire lives, without question, and most of us had no idea. And they created all these limited hangouts, like the Catholic Church, like New Age spirituality, like left and right parties. It's all nonsense. It's all theatre. It's all designed to take your energy. To break those down, to break everything down, to take control over your health is number one priority, because then you get, because nobody's sick, they're toxic. And that's the key thing. If we can understand that the toxicity is deliberate, but it's part of the spiritual war, then the two things are totally interconnected without a doubt. So that's where we're at. We've got this healing center in the west of Ireland called live5dhealth.com. If you go to live5dhealth.com, you can see what it's all about there. And we've had 600 applications from people who want to copy it around the world. So we're
Wow.
planning to expand that out next year. And we're focused on the water, especially in Ireland. It's the wettest country in the world with the worst water in the world. People are sick because of the water. I mean, if you follow Dr. Brian Ardis, you'll know they put
Oh,
snake venom in the water. So and it's much worse than that. You know, they've been killing us slowly for a very long time. So I always had this very clear idea that this is a farm. We're not the top of the food chain, and we've been trapped here for a long time with the reincarnation wheel and everything else. And this is our time to get out, and we're going to ascend as we are with our personalities intact. People are dying. That's been the hard part of it. In the middle of it, I was like, "How why am I making people laugh when there's people dying everywhere?" It was because it's a war.
right.
You know? And during war, you need to keep your spirits high in order to get through it. And really, that's what we're doing. We're getting through it. And I'm an apocalyptimist. This is the apocalypse, which in Greek means great unveiling. And
Mhm.
I'm an optimist about the outcome. So I think that sums me up to some degree.
That was brilliantly said. Um, yeah, there's so much I want to say about the COVID thing. And of course, we have to still be careful about how we approach that topic. But I'll just let you know real quickly, my husband of 47 years passed away from
Mm,
COVID. And he didn't, let's just put it that way. The hospital was very much responsible for what happened to him. So that, and I've been on this journey, a huge part of my life. And of course, we didn't participate in the protocol, let's put it that way. And they gave him remdesivir, as known as run death is near. So I hate to
yeah.
laugh about it, but yeah,
You
so
have to.
yeah, you really do. But I love in your book that you said it was where you were talking about forgiveness, and then you mentioned that you wanted your enemies to pay because we're at war.
Mm.
Something to that. Of course, I'm misquoting you. You can clarify that, but that resonated with me to my core because I feel like we're also in a stage of righteous anger,
Yeah.
and that's okay. So maybe you could clarify that.
Well, throughout the last 5 years, the demonic attacks on me just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, it was so bad at one point. I remember one was on my shoulder physically, and I had to climb up the stairs on my hands and knees. It was that strong, and they were coming in every night. What I've said on my podcast is that the good thing about that is that for those of us that experience those things, what it's done is temper us like tempered like steel in the furnace, right? So we've got stronger because we've realized for once and for all that the biggest weapon they have is fear,
Right.
and that's why they look so ugly, and that's why they say terrible things, and fear and shame and guilt and shame is the other weapon that they have. Especially that's what the Catholic Church is famous for: guilt and
Yeah.
shame. They bang it into you from a young age, and they're not the only ones, but it's that guilt and shame. And if you look at oh, that's weird. I was just about to mention Jerry Marzinski, and he's just popped up on my phone, right?
I'm
So
interviewing
Jerry,
him soon. I think in February, I'm going to be interviewing him.
Jerry's amazing, and I interviewed him a few weeks ago. And
I
Jerry
saw
was a
that.
psychoanalyst, a psychotherapist, sorry,
Right.
that worked with schizophrenics and realized that the schizophrenics were all having a conversation with an invisible person. His profession said, "Don't go there because you'll double, you're enhancing their hallucinations." And he was like, "No, there's a conversation going on. Who are they speaking to?"
Hmm.
So his experience in life came to the same conclusions as me. These demonic entities are real.
Yes.
And there's two voices. I was having this conversation with my daughter half an hour ago. There's two voices in your head. There's the voice of God and there's the voice of the devil. And
Hmm.
you're being presented with these choices on a macro level and a micro level every single moment of your breathing life, and everything. And actually, it's all there for you. So to answer your question, throughout this process of being demonically attacked, like, and psychically attacked, and and they cut the fuel lines on my car in 2022, 21, physically attacked, spat at in the street, all sorts of stuff. In the middle of all of that, there were a huge amount of people going, well, when the demons come, send them to, fill them with love and light and send. And I'm like, no,
Right.
no, 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 no. These bastards have killed your family. They
Yes.
killed my grandfather. They've killed my friends. Yes, we have to forgive them on the big picture, right? Of course, because they are the most damned souls there are, especially the ones in the tunnels doing things to the children.
Yeah.
They are the lowest of the low, but they didn't start out like that. Okay. So forgiveness is the big picture, but it doesn't mean that justice can't exist here.
Exactly.
And the same with the demonic entities. No, what you want to forgive them like immediate? No, they have to pay for what they've done
Absolutely.
in some way or another. The same as all of us would have to pay if we did something terrible like murder, or at the very least, these guys have done atrocious things to humanity,
Oh yeah.
and there will be justice. And it starts with us understanding that. And it's not a popular thing to say because the New Age movement has deliberately ring fenced people and turned them into vegans that just send love and light to everybody. But the thing is that that's actually not any good for us. We need warriors. We need people who are
It's
going to actually,
exactly the
yeah.
armor of God, as you say. Here in the States, it's god awful because they care more about the criminal than they do for the victim, and that's all a part of that too. So they're so worried about the criminals, but the victims. So
And no, so I mean that had just happened in Germany last week. There was a 20-year-old girl who was raped by a 62-year-old man, and she stabbed him, and she got 10 years.
oh,
Hey, she got 10 years in prison, and he got let off. But I do think that's part of the wake up,
yeah,
as horrible as it is. Like the mass immigration, Ireland, UK, America, all over Sweden, all over the world, Germany. Culture being destroyed, all popular culture being destroyed. On a macro spiritual, like we are eternal spirits kind of point of view,
right,
it's really about letting go. And letting go has been the hardest thing. I mean, I was going to write a book about 15 years ago called Life is Easy, and I didn't finish writing it. And it's funny, I had a conversation with Dr. Christiane Northrup about it because she had the same message at the same time. And she did write a book about making life easy, very similar. And I didn't do it. But at the time, I was putting out memes going, let go. And a hot little girl with a balloon, and let go. I didn't really understand it. It's a Taoist concept. And I thought I understood it. I understood it intellectually, but until you've really, really deep down had to understand what it means to let go, because you cannot ascend unless you do let go. I mean, when I was suicidal, God said to me, "You got to let go of everything." And I remember saying, "What, everything? Really? Even my children?" And the answer I got was yes. And I didn't. I was like, God, that's so hard. But we have to let go of everything in order for things to come back into the order that they should be in. I
right.
think it. I think it's that. Sounds glib, but it is that simple. And everything is actually simple. we overcomplicate it because we've overthought
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so this the wonderful thing about this whole period is there's more and more and more people that are getting that macro perspective, seeing the hero's journey play out in their own life and on a big scale, and being able to view it from the perspective where actually we are huge souls that are just having a tiny experience like this. And although it's extremely real and extremely persistently real, it's not as real as we think it is. But if it didn't seem real, then we wouldn't learn the lessons that we need to learn to evolve.
Correct. But the demon thing is so very real. I was fortunate enough to live a life where I didn't have to battle them too much. They weren't like in the forefront of my day and my life. I mean, of course, we all hear the demonic voices telling us things, but when my husband passed, I never in my life, Mark, had a suicidal thought. Never. And then all of a sudden, I just heard a voice, you should kill yourself. Your husband's
Yeah.
gone. You have no reason to live. Now I have two children. I have a granddaughter. I have a lot to live for, but I was hearing this daily, several times a day.
Yeah.
And then it just grew and grew. And I had to get a grief counselor because I started getting scared that I was going to follow through and walk off the planet.
Yeah.
So I realized early on, I knew that these were demonic voices telling me to do that. And every time I heard it, I would just pray it out. I would just pray so deeply and intensively. And that's what helped me fight these demons. So I know definitively that they were demonic voices trying to get me to off myself. And
Yeah.
then they went away for the most part. Every now and then I'll still hear that, your husband's gone. Why are you still here? You should just leave the planet, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Tell us about when you were young. How did you, I think you were very young, right? When they started attacking you, like 5 or something, right?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah. So just give us an overview of your experience with them and how you fought them and fight them till today.
Well, it's not a battle that you always win, is the first thing people need to know. And again, that comes back to the guilt and shame thing, because what they do is they find a way in through any kind of insecurity that you might have, right? This is why a lot of angelic beings that incarnate on Earth turn to alcohol and drugs, because this is a dense, difficult place, and suicide rate amongst those is high. And that's why we had to get as many of us together over the last 4 years as possible to create this grid of light that has been basically holding the field for consciousness to evolve. That's my opinion. That's the way it seems to me. But personally, when I was a little boy, they would come to me all the time, and I just remember seeing their faces and hearing their voices, and they were saying crazy stuff to me, like, you can have anything you want. You got to work for us. And I was like, no, I'm not going to work for you. Even when I was a little boy, I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And there was this one night where it was in 1973, which is the year of what's known as the miners' strike in the UK, when all the coal miners went on strike, and the Prime Minister then was Edward Heath. Now, Edward Heath has since been revealed to be a deeply dark satanic paedophile who was being fed children by Jimmy Savile. Most people watching this will have heard of him. Who was the biggest Pied Piper in history on TV every day, all my childhood, for 50 years from the BBC. And Edward Heath had done this thing called the 3-day week, which I think was when we had electricity for 3 days a week and no electricity for 4. We're going through it now. I've just had 3 days without electricity here because of the storm. And my mum would come into the room with a little tea light, say goodnight, and put it by the side of my bed. And the wall was here and the tea light was there. So if I sat up in the bed, the shadow was there. But this night, I remember there was another shadow the other side of the room that was copying me, but it was very sharply outlined and it had horns on its head. And I was going up and down trying to see what these horns were. And it's this kind of memory that a lot of people have had these things, but they don't talk about them because their parents dismiss them. It's the reason why paedophilia was so rife in the Catholic Church, because the parents would support the priest, not the child.
Right.
So kids hide these things, obviously. and then end up suppressing the memories. And I know this 100% from all the survivors I've met of SRA over the years as well, and just abuse and systemic abuse in the churches especially. But the way that I as a child, I looking back on it, I know they knew who I was before I got here, and that's the same with a lot of people that came here on a mission, and they try to stop you. I mean, they tried to have me aborted before I was born, and that's been one of the biggest traumas I've had to release over the last few years in order to continue doing what I'm doing, because everybody needs healing, and the levels of trauma are not just in your life; they're ancestral as well, and in previous lives. That's why this has been so. That's why this is such a big event, because it's temporal, it's ancient, it's universal, it's huge, it's magnificent because of that. If you can get to the point where you see it as a magnificent thing and it's a challenge, because you are an eternal spirit and you can't die. So, once you understand that, they lose their biggest weapon, which is fear. So throughout my life, I've had these big moments and lots of death in my life as well. My dad died when I was 17, and I had to turn the life support machine off, and
Mm.
that was a massive moment for me. And then lots of friends I've lost through suicide and all sorts of stuff over the years. But all of it kind of is, on your own personal journey, as I've said, strengthens you to some degree or not. You keep getting given these choices, and the demonic voices you heard are part of that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Once you say, oh, it's part of it, right? Okay, I've got a choice to make. Do I want to die or not? And I'm like, well, I don't. I'm choosing not to.
Right.
Why? Because I get FOMO. I think I'm missing out on the greatest show in the galaxy, and I'm like, how can I miss out on this? And then I've got 5 children. And I don't want to miss out on them growing up, and I've got a puppy. There's loads of reasons to live, and you've got to find them. And it's kind of a Buddhist thing. But fighting demons, I didn't. It was kind of nowhere near as loud. In the last 10 years, it's getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And there was one point, I think it was about 2011. I was chopping herbs in the kitchen, making dinner, and I had this voice in my head that said, "Kill your kids."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What? What?" And I ran outside with this big knife in my hand, shaking, going, What was that? That wasn't me." You know, I've since learned that that was a thing called V2K, voice to skull technology.
Oh
And
my.
I only learned that because of a friend of mine, ex-US Navy guy. He had the same thing, targeted individual. I didn't know what it was, but this is also part of, I think I had to experience that. So I understood that actually a lot of the demonic stuff is technological. It's just technology we don't necessarily understand as technology, which is why I think it's on a cellular level, why that's important about clearing out the cells, which is a continuous process because we're continuously being poisoned by things that we can't see, you
Right.
know, nano dust and all sorts of chemtrails and water is everywhere. We're constantly, we're so powerful. Why do you think they go to all these lengths to do this? But anyway, trying to answer your question. Sorry, Caroline, I'm rambling.
Oh no,
Um,
not at all.
there was in my own life, I look back, especially when I was writing this book with Abby, at a time when this guy just appeared in my life. And I was resisting, or the entity that was inside me was resisting him. And this was interesting. He kept ringing me and ringing me and ringing me in my office. And I was like, tell him I'm busy, tell him I'm busy. Because the entity knew what he was going to do. And what he ended up doing was teaching me a load of protection techniques. And then we'd have these meetings in obscure places, and he'd start asking me questions like, I remember once being in this sort of medieval house, and he was asking at a restaurant, and he was saying, what can you see in the kitchen?" I was like, "Oh, there's a little girl in there." He said, "Good, that's that she was killed here 300 years ago." The guy was developing my psychic abilities, and he was also teaching me how to protect myself. And then he went, and now he's passed through, and now he's part of the team that's been helping me, and it's quite amazing when you realize that stuff. So
Oh yeah.
so when Abby actually contacted me and said people need more help with protection, and I was like, yeah, I think they do because they're constantly, even now on my social media, people are, "Oh, I'm so tired, I'm getting attacked." I mean, even this weekend, I've been attacked. I've got a crook neck. I mean, it's constantly going on, but we're stronger than they are, right? And that's the reason why that book got written, so that we could just give some practical tips to people, really, and let people know they're not the only ones that experience this stuff, because it's not embarrassing to talk about it because it's
Right.
totally real.
Right. Do you think that all physical illness are demonic attacks?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most of it is, in one way or another. If you look at cancer, for example, I really looked into cancer deeply over the last 30 years because I've lost so many members of my family to it. And, I went through the whole, firstly, chemotherapy. I mean, my
Yeah.
God, only a demon could deliver that to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's mustard gas. It's carpet bombs, everything. And
Yeah.
then they go, and I remember my mum got diagnosed, and I went to the hospital with her, and the doctor was reading this stuff about chemo, but he sounded like a double glazing salesman. And he was coming out with all these facts and figures. And I worked out the figures in my head and I said, you just said effectively that this has a 0.0001% chance of whatever. And he went, "Ugh." And my mum just went, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Because she was so scared.
Yeah.
And it was huge, a huge learning lesson. So how, and then COVID, who are the people that continue to stick these needles in people's arms when they've had 5 years to work, nearly 5 years to work out that it's poison, and the people are still queuing up for it. And it's kind of like, I've done my best. I've told everybody, please don't get this. At least wait. At least give it a few months. But they were so terrified into it and brainwashed into it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do. And it's like, well, okay. I got to the point where, you know, I don't know if I said this earlier on today or not, but Buckminster Fuller said in the 50s, I think, he said, you can't fight that system, but what you can do is build the one that you want. Because it takes the same energy can do something far more productive. Because I've been fighting this system. When I was touring America, the police came to my house, and my son was terrified because the police said to him, "Your dad could go to prison because he hasn't paid a speeding fine, and he didn't turn up to court." And my son was really freaked out. He said to me, "Dad, why would you risk going to prison over a speeding fine?" And I was like, "That's a good point, actually." And then that led me to a wonderful woman who was in Florida. She was doing lectures 30 odd years ago. Could never remember her name. Might pop back to me. But she talked about the reality of the spiritual kind of situation that we're in. And it's a very simple idea. Just pick your battles, because the energy, and I keep meeting people who are like, well, I'm fighting them on council tax, or I'm fighting them on the TV license. And I'm like, well, that's all well and good. But what if you could put that energy into something positive that was going to help other people today, instead of constantly, because it's a war of attrition, and the system's huge. I'm saying this as somebody who, the analogy for me is I got put into hospital 24 years ago because I thought I could swim against the tide in Spain, and it was really hard and I nearly died doing it.
Oh my
And I
God.
got, but the thing is, though, that's because my ego was like, I can do this. But the sea is powerful. You're one individual. And what we have to learn to do is more. It's more Aikido. It's kind of like using their systems against them. Using their energy against them, and that's what we're trying to do with everything that we're doing. And it's what I've been saying consistently since I started the podcast. Because my background was in internet marketing, and I got told to do a course on it, and I was like, why? And then I realized when I started making it, it was just trying to empower people to speak out, because a lot of people, especially spiritual people, don't want to speak out or feel too nervous about it or whatever, and also have these ideas in their head that are just not true. Like, well, it should all be free. Well, yeah, great, but you
No.
can't, you can't be. You've got to be abundant. It's an abundant world. That whole thing about money being the problem. It's not money that's the problem. It's the system. Yes, we've got to change the system, but you've got to work with what you've got. That's the kind of pragmatism that I have that, some people resonate with and some people aren't ready for.
Right. Exactly. So when someone is being attacked demonically, and you talk about this a lot in your book, how do people recognize it, and what's your advice for them to stop it?
Well, it's that constant negative voice. I mean, what everybody has to realize is you're a miracle of creation, right? Whatever you look like, whatever size or height you are, You're a miracle. You're beautiful. You're extraordinary. The fact that you made it here is extraordinary, right? All those negative voices, the bullying in the schoolyard, the teacher that said you weren't good enough, the parent that didn't hug you enough, that's all been demonic entities. Always was. And once you see that, then you can go, I can release it. Because those negative thoughts are how they control everything, right? So you just face it and release it. There are techniques to do this that are really good. Jerry Marzinski does something very good called the MACE method, which I'd highly recommend people go and have a look at. But yeah, that's what they're just it's just them doing their thing. And what's interesting about them, and I think this was from Jerry as well. I also interviewed an interesting guy called Alabar Jones from Australia not so long ago, who's also fighting them in the fourth dimension with a load of remote viewers. And there's a lot of interesting information comes from him too about them, and it's always kind of similar. They're kind of very banal creatures actually, and they have zero empathy for us. We're just a food source for them. And one of the things that they said to Jerry during his work was similar kind of things to what I was getting, is you have no right to interfere in our way of life. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Because it's their way. We're just their food source. I mean, it's the same as if a chicken started speaking to us and say, "Can you stop stealing my eggs, please? Because it's upsetting my family." We'd be like, "Don't be stupid. You're a chicken.
Right.
Uh, keep laying the eggs. Thank you very much." You know what I mean?
That's so true. One of the things I
Yeah.
learned from Jerry was he worked with a woman. I forgot her name. I know he works very closely with her, and she suffered a great deal in her life and learned this technique where when you hear these voices, you just go, "That's a lie."
Oh well, yeah. I mean, the simplest thing
Okay.
that I learned is to just tell them to off.
Right, right.
But you got to mean it.
Right.
This is the thing. And then when they kept coming into my bedroom,
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was dreading going to bed because I knew what was going to happen as soon as I shut my eyes, and I just got so fed up with it. I just stood up and I went, "Will you just
Right.
top my voice?"
Right.
And they just they scattered because if you
Yeah.
don't, they know if you mean it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And when you mean it, you are standing in divine power. It's in Christian terms, you'd say you're invoking the spirit of Jesus or the spirit of God. It's the same thing. It's when you are completely coming from so deep inside your soul. They're terrified of that because that's true power.
Sure.
Yeah,
Like
and
never
whether that's
to battle them. Like I would never say, put up your dukes. I would never want to battle one of these creatures, but telling them to F off is brilliant. It's great. Yeah.
well, I think they push you to the point where you either do or you don't, and if you do, they tend to leave. They'll come back at you in different ways. They'll
Yeah.
come back at you through people. They'll come back at you through people you love. If somebody you love, whether it's a friend or a family member or husband or wife, whatever, starts talking negatively at you or being weird, that's because they've been attacked to attack you. It's all hierarchical, right? And it's all to do with the power structure, and they know who's going to affect the future because there's no such thing as time where they are. So they can see who you are and what you're going to do and whether you're part of this thing or not. And their job is to just take you out. Their job is to just put you off your course, not necessarily to kill you, but to just yeah, go on, have another drink, have one more drink. Take that line of coke, take that line of coke.
Right.
Go to that. It's just whispering in your ear, and it works. It's worked throughout history, but we're at the point where we can see it now, and because we can see it, their power is diminished. That's why the occult exists. The word occult just means hidden.
Yeah.
Why? Why does it have to be hidden? Well, because that's where all the power is in
Right.
our ignorance of it. So that's why it's everybody's responsibility to learn as much about this as possible and to face it
Absolutely.
without fear, you know?
It makes me feel bad for the human race. It's almost like all this was thrusted upon us for what. And I was raised a Catholic, and we were taught about, we were born with mortal sin and all that stuff. So I don't believe any of
Well,
that.
the word sin actually just means ignorance.
Yeah.
It just means lack of knowledge. So they're telling you the truth, but not the way you think they are.
The way, not the way we were taught to believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Catholic Church did a lot of damage to all three, my two of us, my siblings and myself. And it took many years to recover from that. Nuns beating us up and the whole, awful stuff. But um I want to talk about ascension a little bit with you because you talk about a lot about that in your book too, and we hear a lot about elevating from 3D to 4D to 5D and all that stuff. But I think it goes a lot deeper. Like there's so many people having awakenings that it gives me the chills when I see them on the internet talking about their awakening. I mean, and that's why I'm here interviewing you too. This is such an essential part of it. Reading your book, such an essential part of learning how to get the tools to protect yourself from all of this. Tell us about what does ascension mean to you?
Well, I first heard about 5D about 15 years ago and the concepts of it. And I was like, what does that mean? Does that mean we die? Does that mean we leave our body? What does that mean? Does that mean there's ships come to rescue? There's so many different versions of it. And obviously the Bible's full of the rapture and
Yes,
Revelation and all this kind of stuff. And there is no simple answer to it. Well, there is a simple answer to it, but people might not like it. The answer is you're the only person, you're the only one here. What does that mean? Well, it means you're the only. So everything that's happening is for you, and it's your ascension is, nobody that I've heard or there's a lot of people I watch who are very definitive about stuff, right? And I'm not that person because I can't tell you 100%. I don't think anybody can because I think if if it was all revealed to us all at once, there would be no point in going through any of it.
exactly.
It's kind of like in a way it's kind of delayed pleasure. When you're a kid, you wait until dinner time before you eat instead of having the sweets, and then you stay fit and healthy and you really enjoy the dinner. It's like if you climb the top of a mountain before you open the flask, that cup of tea at the top of the mountain is the best tea you've ever had in your entire life, or
Yep.
coffee or whatever it is that you drink. So it's kind of like, why would you want to know what it actually is? Except I keep getting the same thing, and it is, apart from the fact that you're the only one here, it's also, um, it's just slipped my mind now. I keep getting the same thing, and then it just went. Phew, I'm running away now. I'm not coming back. Um, oh, it'll come back to me. What was it about? I was about to say something, and I heard a noise in the
Well,
kitchen.
we were talking about the 3D, 4D, 5D, and you were saying how you're not that type of person that's definitive about what it means. So,
Yeah. If we start saying, or if anybody online starts saying, well, it's this, and Elon
yes.
Musk is that, and Donald Trump is this, and it all becomes definitive, then you've been trapped again. It's all. Yeah, I know what I was going to say. It's all about the present moment.
Mm. Power of
All,
now.
all of this is about the present moment. Can you actually live in the present moment? That's a massive, massive one because people are. Fear is only when you're worried about the future that doesn't exist yet,
Right.
and regret and shame is when you're worried about the past, which is gone. So, can you live in the present moment? And then people say, well, yeah, well, what about money and food and things like that? Well, yeah, 100%. But when you are in, and I look at it like it's a 0 point field of energy, it's like that state that people meditate for. Once you get into that position where you're in a state of pure flow, and when you're in that state, everything just happens effortlessly anyway, despite the noise of what's going on outside. It doesn't mean that things don't go wrong. You don't still get aches and pains and people still might upset you and stuff, but they're just minor things because
Right.
actually things can flow. And I was teaching the law of attraction years ago because I'd had such remarkable experiences with it myself. So when I first heard of the law of attraction, I was like, hang on, I've been doing that my entire life. That's crazy. What is that? And I dug in it, and then I found Abraham Hicks and all the other people.
Mhm.
And then I found The Secret, and I found that really interesting because when I discovered The Secret, which was on Oprah, by the way, which tells you everything you need to know if you know what I'm talking about. the secret was basically a reworking of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, Napoleon Hill was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to write that book originally, and Carnegie was like, if you don't know him, go and look him up. He was like the Bill Gates of his day, and he gave his Rolodex of contacts. This is the story to Napoleon Hill and said, go and write this book. I think it took 16 years, and when this manuscript came back, Carnegie took out chapters or bits of information. Well, okay, well, we're not going to tell them everything, you know. So the missing pieces, and our whole history is like that, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the Bible, I think 900 books were taken out of the Bible by the Romans in 325 AD, at the Council of Nicaea, including the books of Enoch, which are possibly the most important books in it. And
Yeah.
then, you know, if you go forward in time, you look at our history, and then you look at Tartaria and you go, hang on a minute, what are these great buildings? How
Yeah.
did they build those? You know, and you're like, there's all these missing bits. I mean, somebody told me yesterday, in fact, you just reminded me that they found a giant bones in Belfast this week,
Mhm.
which is really interesting because giants did rule the, you
Oh,
know, walk the earth. And I got it years ago. I got told dinosaurs were just made up to cover up the fact there were these giant bones everywhere. And they didn't want us to know about giants. And I was like, that's disappointing because I love dinosaurs. They're great fun. But, you know, you look at the T-Rex, makes no sense whatsoever, does it? I mean, what's he going to do with those little paws? That's not evolution. That's just made up nonsense.
no, that's
So
funny.
big teeth, but tiny little paws. What's he going to do?
Right.
Get him in a fist fight. That's how you get a T-Rex.
Oh, goodness.
Um, but yeah, you know, it's just hilarious. And the other thing is, it's like being in a dark sitcom, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's like it's horrific on one hand, but hilarious on another. And it's like, and I think it's those extremes that are forcing us to find that point in the
Right.
middle where we go, okay, I cannot hold the sea back. I'm not King Canute, but I
Right.
can be here. And I think that's what we're all looking for, is that point where, you know, like the Tibetan monks that find the rainbow body. I don't think we didn't need to go that far, but I do think it's about getting to the point where enough of us are in a state of flow so that divine energy can come through us. And that is really how it's like the pathway to higher consciousness on a mass, on a wider scale. And I'm seeing it everywhere, and it's there if you've got the eyes to look. You know, if you are in your own life acting in you know, in service or in as much about other, you know, am I the best person I can be today? You know, if you are doing that on a regular basis and avoiding the negative thoughts and demons and entities, then you'll see it around you. You'll see that you start hanging out with better people and you start achieving things easier, and then the bills become easier to pay and everything kind of but because we're looking at it on a minute scale and how much dollars have I got in my purse today, and you know, because we're too micro in our analysis,
Yeah.
if we can get that bigger picture,
Yeah.
to get there involves work, and I used to hate that term. People say you've got to do the inner work, and I'd be going, oh, piss off. But you know, you can do it. You're doing it anyway, you know,
Exactly.
just by being here.
I think people were very misled by the law of attraction and still are. They
Yeah,
think
yeah,
they could just think it and hey, where is it? I wished for a Maserati and it never came. You give a good example about a couch that you
yeah,
manifested. So I got
yeah.
such a kick out of that. But kind of explain your, you know, your overall premise on the law of attraction and what are folks doing wrong and right?
Well, yeah. I started telling that just then because I was going to go somewhere with it. So there's a couple of things that come up. Firstly, the law of attraction, as we've known it so far, has been kind of placed in the head. Okay, so you can't just put a picture of a Maserati on the wall and then complain that it's not there 6 months later because you haven't put enough work into manifesting it properly. And the manifesting really comes from believing it in your gut.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the bit that gets taken out. You know, you have to believe it in your gut, which, and people say, and I've taught this to thousands of people in the room in front of me, and they go, well, how do you believe it in your gut? Well, you have to give yourself stages of it, and you have to kind of fake it till you make it. And then people are like, well, faking it's no good. Well, it is, because every single thing you see in this world started as a thought in somebody's mind,
Right.
right? So How did Gaudi go from picturing this incredible cathedral to it actually being there, even though it's not finished, to actually being there? Because he had to believe that it was possible, and then convince other people that it was possible, convince a builder, convince a stonemason, convince the local authority, whoever was involved in the building of this cathedral. How did it get to become this magnificent piece of architecture? Well, because it's belief. But so that's the bit that's kind of missing. And the people that don't actually sit and, one of the cheats for that is to just write all the things down as if you've already got them. I mean,
Yes.
one of the best things is, I mean, I could go on about this for hours, but the short version is if you go from saying I want, because if you say I want, you're pushing it away, you haven't got it. And then you change it to I am or I have, that's good. But if you change it then to why have I or why am I, then the universe has to answer the question quicker. That's not my work, that's somebody else's affirmations instead of affirmations. And that's really powerful stuff. But it's mental. This is a mental universe, right? So your true brain is in your gut. I think you've got multiple brains: heart, gut, mind, everything. And the mind is really a transceiver. So if it's transmitting and receiving, those things are things. Thoughts are things. So which is why you've got to take control of your mind as much as you possibly can. Which means so everything is there for you. I keep going back to the same thing. It's for you. Everything that's happened in your life or is happening at the moment in the world is all for you because you're the only one here. But what I was going to say about this is that we're moving into the age of Aquarius, away from Pisces, and the law of attraction is becoming heart centered. So if it's coming from your heart, I think that's the way to really speed up manifesting everything, and manifesting a better world has to come from here because this has got too much noise in it, and this can't lie.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, what I think about the law of attraction now.
That was great. That was brilliant. I've been doing a lot of research and interviewing folks on the Mandela effect because
Yeah,
I find that fascinating.
yeah,
What do you think is going on with timelines and dimensions and lyrics to songs changing and just
yeah.
all crazy shit? Like what is going
Crazy shit.
on?
I'm looking for the book that kind of proves it all. My desk is a mess,
Yeah.
but there's a if people watching this haven't, oh, hang on, is that it? Oh, here it is. No, it's not. Um, the books by Ingersoll Lockwood are a good place to start. So they were written in the 1890s and 1900, I think was the last one, the last president. Before that, it was The Adventures of Baron von Trump.
Oh, that's mind blowing stuff. It really is.
Totally. I
Yeah.
mean, Baron
Yeah.
von Trump was a time traveling, and his best friend Don
Dawn.
Jr. I think,
Yeah.
became the last from New York, became the president of the last president of the United States. What? And then when you understand that Nikola Tesla wrote a paper on time travel in the early 20s, and Professor John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, was at MIT, I think, and the longest serving professor, I think, he went and found, and people don't know this bit, and I can't verify it. It feels right, this detail, because there is a detail about him just emptying Tesla's safe for the FBI or the CIA.
Hmm.
What I think actually happened is he went to talked to Tesla about this time travel paper, and then they worked together for years. And I think the Trumps are time travelers, without question.
I know.
So,
So
so what
too.
does how does that work? Well, I think a lot of us are time travelers. Actually, do you remember that Christopher Reeve film he made after Superman, where it was like he kind of would go into a dream and then he'd be in a different time, and he fell in love with a girl in another time. I can't remember what it was called. But all the answers are in the movies. They've told us, they have to tell
Yeah.
us everything. Um, and it's real. Time travel is real, and we are affecting it with our consciousness. And we've been going through multiple timelines, I guess you'd call. People call them timelines as if they know what they're talking about, and maybe some of them do. But it's kind of hard to, without a diagram, how do you draw it out? But I think that's what the Mandela effect is all about. These potential realities have existed, and our consciousness has either collapsed them or moved them into something else, into this one timeline that we're supposedly following. But it does, I've felt them, actually collapsing and moving and shifting.
I have too.
And yeah, and and I'm forgetting names and I'm forgetting things a lot. And it's not just because I'm getting older, it's because I'm like, do these things, and it's all there in Back to the Future. It's like that picture of him, Michael J. Fox, with his brother and sister, and they disappear and stuff. It's
Yeah,
like, but is any of that real either? Well, it doesn't really matter actually, because it's all about you finding that present moment. You got to keep boiling it down to that. It's the same as all the doom and gloom about the future of humanity being spread all over the place by people in the truther world. Well, they're kind of missing the point. They're getting bogged down in another detail that is just there to help them evolve. But then scaring a load of people. I get messages like that all the time, and it always comes down to the same thing. It's there for you. We're the creators. That's the energy that they're feeding off. The whole system is created to feed off that immense energy that we have, which is your soul energy, and just reclaim it. Don't know if that's yeah. I mean, it is fascinating though. I'm
truly.
fascinated by it all. I mean, I'll tell you one funny story, Caroline.
Yeah.
I I got an email from somebody once, and when I started the podcast, I was getting tens of thousands of emails a month, and I tried to answer all of them,
Wow.
and it was killing me, and I couldn't do it. Anyway, so I couldn't answer them all because it was crazy at that time. And there was one email that came in, and it said, "I don't watch your show. My friend does, but I've been up on the ships for years, and they want to contact you, and this is how you do it." And then I was like, I get loads of emails like that, and I was like, I'm going to ignore that. And then there was this one line that got me, and it said, "By the way, they know that you look up every night." And I was like, whoa, because I do. I have my entire life, every night,
Oh
if I
yeah.
can, I'm out looking. And anyway, I got instructions on how to do it. I did it that night, and then I basically connected to a star, got it to move, proved that communicate with it telepathically. And I've seen tens of thousands of UFOs over my 55 years on this earth, but this one was something else, right? And it just popped up over the roofs of the houses, and just moved really gorgeous light, but very low, about 300 feet, big light, moving really, really slow. And I was just like, wow, that's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The light was so ethereal. I don't know if that's the right word, even. It was just such a beautiful white light. And then it kind of got here, and then the sky lit up, and then there was this big triangular ship with round corners and covered. It was kind of a burnt orange color with black hieroglyphics all over it, and it was there for a split second, and then it just went like Star Trek. And then the next week, I was interviewing Alex Collier, the Andromedan contactee, and I told him this story off camera. And then he said to me, and this is the first time I come across this concept. I said, who were they? And he said, that was your future self. And I went, what?
That's that. Yeah.
I was like, what? What does that mean? And that's been really, really interesting, digging into that idea, because maybe that's true, maybe not. I don't know.
What other encounters have you had with extraterrestrials? Do you have memories of being on board their ships or any negative memories? Like
Yeah.
what tell us about some of them.
Well, I don't have memories of being on board their ship, although one of my sons does, and he was telling us about it last night. Mantoids came and took him onto the ship and made him a cup of tea, and then and
Wow.
he drew pictures of it. Um, I don't have any memories of being on the ships directly, but when I had meningitis when I was a kid, and I was my parents were told I was probably going to die, but I didn't. And that was an out of body experience where I was talking to somebody all the way through it. And that was like a repressed memory that came back maybe 10, 12 years ago. And the reason that's connected to this is because I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of past life regression work. I've done a lot of healing work and trauma release and physical, healing type stuff. And during that process, there was a memory that came back to me that really freaked me out, and it was, and this led to another memory, and it was like there were like five of the grays operating on my brain,
Oh,
and I was awake,
yeah.
and that was vivid, and that was not here. So must have been on a ship. And it wasn't a dream, it was a really vivid memory that came back. And I do remember as well, there was an earthquake in the UK in about in the early 90s, I think it was. And I was in bed one night and I just remember waking up and there were like six or seven of them around my feet. And I remember that very, very clearly. And the best way of explaining what that looked like is, and I was thinking about this yesterday, there's a film made by the Wachowski brothers stroke sisters
Mhm.
called
Yeah.
Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
Have you seen that film?
Mhm.
That film does its perfect. I watched that film. I was like, this is the best film I've ever seen. Everybody else was like, oh, it's rubbish. I was like, no, it's brilliant because it's exactly what's been going on. And the way that they're depicted coming in and out of, dimensionally
Yeah. Yep.
is exactly what it is like. And I've had just lots of little puzzle pieces over the years putting it together that, yeah, I think I've definitely been taken up and messed about with. And I think a lot of us have, and a lot of us have had implants put inside us that are multi-dimensional, that have taken abilities away from us, but we've been reclaiming them because we've been fighting this war in multiple dimensions because our monad is massive.
Yeah.
And these things are all happening at the same time. And us remembering who we really are is really the other part of this process.
Absolutely. I found it a little concerning that a lot of folks believe that these ETs are demonic in nature. I don't get that at all. I don't think they're demonic. I just think they're from other stars, galaxies, and I don't know what their true nature is in terms of, appearing here now in mass quantities. Like, what do you think? Do you think the government is going to truly disclose this to us? I mean, I know that's asking a lot, but where's the connection for you? First of all, do you think that they are demonic in nature, and why not if you don't?
Well, there's a lot of interesting things that come up when you ask that question. I'm immediately taken back to reading the works of Stuart Wilde. Have you ever heard of Stuart
Oh, sure.
Wilde?
Yep.
So I loved him 15, 20 years ago, and I consumed as much of his stuff. For those that don't know, he was the first author to be published by Hay House after Louise Hay had had a big hit with her first book, You Can Heal Yourself. And he wrote a book called The Infinite Self. And Stuart ran a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies, especially in Holland. I nearly went on one. I nearly met him. I did speak to one of his best friends, and I was close to meeting him. But he died, funnily enough, in Ireland about like 2012 or something like that. Now, I disagreed. He kept saying that UFOs are demons, right? And that was his definitive answer. Here we go, definitive answers. Don't do definitive answers.
Right.
And the only definitive answer comes from God, and a lot of people think they're talking to God, but they're not. They're talking to somebody pretending to be him.
Right.
So the idea that they are all demons, no, I don't agree with that at all. I don't, but I don't know. But I tell you why I don't agree with it is because my experiences with this kind of stuff with ships and UFOs, I mean, I've been able to call them in. I mean, I was touring America, I was calling them in. I've called them in at parties. It's like a party trick. And then they come and give us a light show. I mean, do I have dominion over demons? I don't think so. Um, and when that ship came to see me 2 or 3 years ago, I've been very calm about everything ever since. We've been
Hmm.
just like, well, let's just do what we've got to do. I've seen that. They meant me no harm at all. But I've also got the memories of being operated upon by these little greys. So I think throughout the course of, especially the last 5 years, the conclusion that I've come to is that there are multiple species, interdimensional, temporal, existing in different planes of existence, and there's multiple factions.
Right.
This is what I've come to. The same as there are in humanity. Um, so people who say the Arcturians are all good, well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of them are, but maybe there's some bad ones. Maybe there's some bad Pleiadians. Maybe there's some,
Yeah.
I don't, maybe there's some bad guys from Venus. It would make sense. I mean, because we've got good guys and bad guys here.
Exactly.
So why wouldn't we? And why wouldn't people have factions and why wouldn't they be fighting over turf? Because the whole mafia system that we live in has to come from somewhere. And why would it be any different with us and not with other species. So I don't think they're all demons, and I do think that they're extremely real. Do I think they're from other planets? I'm still not sure until I've actually physically set foot on one and seen it. I'm not. I don't know. Is it multidimensional? Yes, definitely. But that's the thing I'm most interested in. Is the government going to disclose? Or, well, all the signs are there. You know, obviously people are arguing about whether it's going to be partial disclosure or full disclosure, according to people like Stephen Greer. And then you've got other people saying Elon Musk, it's all a big setup and he's going to do the greatest deception of all time. And then there's Trump going, well, you know, it's a big thing and they wanted to disclose it, but then he couldn't and he was told not to. But what I do know is that I feel very strongly drawn to the story of Valiant Thor,
Yeah.
really strongly to that. And I do think that's a true story. And I do think that he came and met with Eisenhower. And I do think all that stuff happened and he got tortured and they tried to. And I do think that that is a lot to do with the plan that's unfolding now. And I do feel a very strong connection with that. So, but like everybody else, I don't truly have all the answers, and I don't think anybody does. And I think that's the point, because if you had all the answers, you wouldn't learn anything, and that's what we're.
Really.
It's an individual journey. So, I don't. There's probably a fudged answer. I don't. It'd be great. I mean, there's part of me like, please just do it all tomorrow. But you know, it's like the destination is great, but the journey is the best bit.
Yep.
You
Painful
know.
as it is sometimes, but I definitely agree that it is the best bit. Um, it's confusing if you believe in God or a God. It's very confusing to try to understand why he allowed demonic forces to reign on the earth and put us here with them. Where's your take on that whole thing? You're a God believing man, right? Something
Yeah.
created this universe.
Yeah, this is the other. This is my other book.
Yes, God wins.
You know, and people say, "Oh, why do you use the word God?" It's this. Well, it's because everybody knows what it means.
Right.
I mean, my relationship with God very strong as a young child, and but then I did become not an atheist, but I became an agnostic. I went through the same thing when my dad died. I was like, "How could God let this happen?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense." And then over time, I think all of creation is under God, and the crazy, the craziness of this whole situation is that it is the best way to learn. There's my dog; she's disagreeing. Um, and there are multiple truths,
Right.
and that all comes back down to you're the only one here. It's the only way of answering it, really. Does it mean, because I've wrestled with this my entire life, but I do know that God is really the 0 point energy, and we are fractals of that, and we have that ability. We're all fractals of God, including the demons. So, are they actually here doing us a favor? Because we asked for this, because we are part of creation, and creation wanted to experience itself in all extremes. I mean, some of us go through life meekly, pay our mortgage, and die nice and quietly, and others of us climb Everest and fall out of airplanes, and there's all these extreme versions of humanity. Why wouldn't there be extreme versions of all creation? And
Such a good
coming
point.
back for and all these demons will need forgiving in the big picture, but right now let's just get them out of the way and get justice and build an amazing future that we can experience, because I think we've earned it.
Yes, absolutely, we have. Oh boy. Um, you talk about the importance of having a daily spiritual workout in your book. What is that in a nutshell for folks, and how important is that? Because when you talk to some people too, and this has a lot to do with like your own personal awakening. Years ago I used to try to like I'd see chemtrails and I'd go, don't you know, like what the, oh no, that's just jet streams. And I'd argue back and forth and go, no, it's barium and aluminum and try to explain. And it was, and then I just one day let it go, like you said. And I don't do that anymore. But what does it mean to you to have a spiritual workout every day?
Well, it's evolved over the years, but it usually starts with like gratitude. Things. I
Mm,
mean, that's
a
so
big one.
simple. It's so simple.
And it's a
It's
big
just
one.
taking a moment. Yeah, it is. But just taking a moment to think,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get on Twitter first thing in the morning and go, oh my God, it's all going to hell in a handcart. But actually, just think about those simplistic, beautiful things in your life and the things you're most grateful for. And I have seven usually. And if I don't do it, my day isn't as good. So it starts with gratitude. And then, um, some people need to meditate for an hour. I can just do it for like 30 seconds and I'm set. And it's just,
Mhm.
I'll just ask for protection. I'll just try and connect with just connect with yourself really. And if you want to say a prayer, say a prayer. If you want to recite a psalm, say. I mean, when I was little, it was the Lord's Prayer that I really did a lot of. Um, I don't do that as much these days, although I'm still fond of it. I think it's been doctored, and so it's really about finding your own conversation with God and having that chat because that is you connecting to your higher self. And when you do that, your day will be a lot better. And learning some simple techniques. Oh, it's 1717 as I'm saying this, which is a magic number for me. Learning some simple techniques that to protect yourself. The most powerful one for me is the bell jar technique. If you do feel like you're under attack, just imagine yourself inside a bell jar shaped thing that's upside down. It's that shape, and you're inside it, and you're connected to the ground, and it's covered in silver. And if there's any, and you just basically ask for it to be filled with divine light or whatever you want to call it. Some people have different names. The light of Saint Germain, purple light, whatever. It's cleansing, powerfully spiritual light that comes in and floods the whole jar,
I love that.
and it's flooding you. So it's like some people imagine it as a shower. The water turns into light. You have this. This is a hologram, so you can make it whatever you want to be. And then the outside of it is the way it was taught to me is silver, and any negative energy comes towards you is return to sender. You know, so they're kind of eating themselves. I often go return to sender at 1 billion% just to make sure they're gone. Some people don't agree with that. Some people say return to sender into the light. Well, whatever, they'll just come back at you. So, that's just a very simple technique. And if you're watching this and you try it, you may experience that you're levitating in your mind's eye. If that happens, just purple rope tying you down to the ground.
Right. You
Uh,
talk about that in your book.
well, I got taught that by a master, and I found it very very useful, and I just passing it on really to get it to as many people as possible. Because really, the purpose of the book is that if we get as many people as possible. And this book is a stepping off point. We're not gurus. The book's written very much from the point of view of like, well, I've just lived this ordinary life and these things happened, and this is what I've learned on the way. Abby's had a different experience, and that's why it's a two-way conversation because it's not a definitive. You must do that. It's not dogmatic. It's just like here's a good jumping off point, and then you'll find your own way with it, and you'll find your own techniques. But the more of us that do that, the more frustrating it is for them, and the quicker we win this war. And the quicker we get into the golden age, which is where we're going.
Absolutely.
So
Talk.
I'd like to be there quickly.
Yeah, I would do. Talk about the Schumann resonance a little bit and how, we're affecting it and what it, just tell folks quickly what it is.
Well, the Schumann resonance is supposedly the frequency of the Earth and or Gaia, the spirit of the Earth, and I'm not sure that's true, but I'm also not sure it's not true. So
Right.
there's been a lot of things like this that are potentially limited hangouts, but again, it all comes back down to you. So people will put up and go, "Oh, have you seen the Schumann resonance? It's off the charts," and
Right.
and people will. But people are going through their own individual awakenings. It's like you mentioned the chemtrails. I was arguing for years. I'm an ex-pilot. I know what the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail is. But I'd be arguing with friends of mine who got doctorates in physics, arguing with me, saying they were, and I was like, "What? Why can't they see it?" And
Yeah,
then again, it's another thing outside of your control. So what are you going to do apart from going and finding the planes that are doing it and blowing them up? What are you going to do? You know,
exactly.
we can't all do that. So we haven't got an army to go and do that with. So in a way, it's kind of like transmuting it. So if the Schumann, coming back to the Schumann resonance, if you resonate with what you're hearing about the Schumann resonance, great, it's for you, or you find your own connection to it.
Exactly. Right. That's so true.
I think it's another thing there that steers you towards you're the only person in the room and everything's there for you. And can you find 0 point energy in your own existence here or not? Sorry, I thought I'd keep closing WhatsApp down and it keeps opening up again. Um, and it all comes back to the same thing. Are you living in the present moment and are you living in service to others?
It kind of made me think there might be, because when they did that global experiment of everybody meditating at the same time, and then they measured the outcome, there was a difference. So, you know what I'm talking about. So maybe there is some type of resonance that we do emit. Who knows? I just kind of
No,
made
it's absolutely. I mean, Lynn McTaggart's work, the intention experiment, all of that
right.
is great. But at the same, and this is the thing, I think everything's a double-edged sword. There's been a huge amount of mass meditations going on in the last 4 or 5 years. I remember signing up to Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey's mass meditations years ago. And I've just got a very deep mistrust of anything that's mass
Yeah,
because,
I get it. I
you
completely
know,
get that too.
doesn't mean they're all bad or wrong, but the 100% we can affect the outcome of everything because it's quantum. So, it's the observer effect, isn't it? And if everybody focuses on something being amazing, then it could be brilliant. But it's you got to be careful about where who's controlling these things and whether there's something else or hidden. If they're asking you to say certain words, do you really
Yeah,
understand them?
right,
Because
exactly.
words are spells, and the
Yes,
language is hiding spells all the time. So again, I think it's yet another thing that is there that will teach you discernment and being your own. I mean, it's like that Monty Python line in the Life of Brian. You're all individuals. I'm not. I mean, it's the funniest line in history.
it's hysterical. That's funny. Um, I have so many questions for you. I'm just going to keep you another few minutes if that's okay with you, Mark. Maybe, hopefully, we could do this again one day because I still have so many questions to ask you. The things I learned in your book. Um, you talk about the greatest truth of all. And when I read that, I had to pause because that really hit me. I loved what you said in there. Could you just reiterate that a little bit?
I'm gonna have to look it up.
That struck me because you talk about lying and honesty, and I think people have forgotten the importance of that, how essential it is to not lie to yourself or others. And
Oh yeah, I've not read this in over a year. So well, yeah. I mean, it comes back to the same. The book says, and that's the book, by the way. You are worthy. It's back to the same thing, really. Whatever. I don't talk about any of this from the point of view of like I'm some perfect human being. I've been a drinking, smoking, drug taking idiot a lot of my life, and I've made a lot of stupid mistakes. And I'm not saying I don't make them anymore, but I'm doing my best. And I think that's what you've got to actually pat yourself on the back. If you're doing your best, what else is there? And if you realize that you are worthy and that all those mistakes were bad choices. You got to forgive yourself first. I mean, in order to be able to forgive other people, you have to start with yourself and realize, just go back to that. Um, you're a miracle of creation,
right,
and you're worthy of everything and you deserve everything. There's, people talk about it in the world of money and then have this whole schism about it because there's this constant tug of war going on in their mind between whether you deserve to live the life that you want, whatever that is. Money's just a stepping stone to stuff. Choices, love. It's really about your family and the love of an animal, a pet. The just picking a flower and having it. Well, don't pick it. Just have a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just appreciating. But when you're appreciating what's outside of you, also appreciate what's inside of you, because you are extraordinary. And any thought in your head that tells you that you're not was put there by somebody else.
Right. Gosh, that's so true. And what do you think folks could do to call upon their spirit guides and their the people that love them, that are in the afterlife right now, that are watching out and protecting? Because I believe they do. How do you get in touch with them? Because a lot of people don't know how. They just talk. Do you just talk to them? Is that how you start your day, asking them for protection and guidance? Like, what's your advice for folks to be able to connect with them, with their spirit guides?
Well, I think it's a personal thing. I literally just talk to them and wait until I feel them. Is the easiest way I can put it.
Is that like a Holy Ghost feeling, like where you just feel surrounded by love and the light? Like, what's that like?
Well, for me, it's like a tingle. That's the only
Yeah.
way. A tingle is the only way I can describe it. It's a knowing. It's just like I know. It's like my dad has been with me throughout a lot of COVID years, and I've seen his face there. It's not like he's in the room, I can touch him, but I've seen his face, and it's not my imagination. It's there, and I can feel him because I remember what he felt like.
Mm,
And it's a feeling, it's a knowing. It's not, and it's subtle. The other thing about a lot of this stuff is these are subtle energies they're subtle compared to like hitting yourself and
right.
burning yourself or something. Oh, that's not subtle at all. But these energies are subtle, and it's just about tuning into those things, I think. Um, I didn't. My spirit guides, would. I've been very aware of the fact that there are um, a lot of people channeling spirit guides and spirits and stuff that really, you know, demonic entities pretending to be something else. So
Exactly. You have to be careful not to tune
yeah,
into the wrong group of guides out there. I mean,
well, exactly. There's loads of them.
right?
There's loads of people that, especially people who get a bit of healing ability, they get a Jesus complex, and it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, they're great tricksters. You
Oh,
really need to protect yourself.
you do, but that's part of the fun of it. So,
Exactly.
and if you see it as fun, then it is fun. I couldn't identify my spirit guides for a long time, and I was like, well, why are they hiding? Who are they? So I'm kind of specific about it's the same answer. It's just a very personal thing,
Yeah,
and it's really about you feeling it and not getting to the point of view where you're definitive about everything. Because if you are, then you've fallen into a trap, and
exactly.
that's the thing you want to
Gosh,
avoid
that's
the
such
most.
good advice, honestly. I love that. Anything you want to tell us in closing? Maybe talk about your healing center or what you're working on or looking forward to. You're always doing such great things. I love the people that you interview. It's like I have to watch one of your videos every day. It's like so inspiring for me. So, what would you like to tell folks in closing?
Well, there's a million things I could talk about, like the healing centers and stuff like that. But I mean, if you're interested in that, just go to live5dhealth.com, and it'll either appeal to you or it won't. Um, just try to keep your mind open as much as you possibly can. Don't get married to any ideas. Um, realize that everything you've been taught is a lie, and it's your job to pick out the truth. And what I say to my kids, what I've said to my kids every single day of their lives, especially when they've gone to school, and I think actually is appropriate here as well. I say, as I've dropped them off, I say the same thing. Have a great day in prison. Remember, everything that they're teaching you is bullshit, and you're going to have to relearn it and question everything, including this.
I love that. That was great. I laughed when I read that in your book. Hold your book up again, please. I really want folks to read this book. I was so thrilled and excited. I didn't read God Wins yet. That's going to be my next one. But Weapons of Mass Protection, folks, seriously, I will have the link to where you can pick that up in the description of this video, as well as running across the screen. Mark, where can folks reach you? I know you don't probably want to be bombarded with emails, but can they leave comments and maybe you could pop in and check them out?
Well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, this book, there's hopefully the link you're sharing, you can get it for free as an ebook. It's donation based if you want, and there's other ways. But if you do claim it, whether you donate or not, you'll get sent a link to where you can get the print version if you wanted it. But that's your choice. I have a website where everything is archived, which is themarkattwoodshow.com. I have a Substack, which I try to do as much as I can on, which is really about podcasting, but also writing, and my sometimes do audio podcasts on there. That's diary of a conspiracy theorist.substack.com. I'm busiest on X, which is x.com/Mark Attwood and ATT Wood. And I'm on Rumble and BitChute. I've got a new YouTube channel, but I can't post much because they always delete me, and they already cancelled deleted two of my channels, especially the last one when I linked. I went back to John D through to Aleister Crowley, through Ian Fleming to Jimmy Savile and Philip Schofield, and they took my channel down immediately. They didn't like that, which means I must be close to the truth.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Mark. This was really such a pleasure speaking with you. So enlightening. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you about such things.
Well, it's been lovely speaking with you. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. I hope we can do it again someday.
Yeah, anytime.
Take care, dear.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.